Social media and misinformation. A big phenomenon that AI and social media has brought about is the proliferation of mis and disinformation. In this lecture, we will discuss the following. We will establish a basic understanding and vocabulary around the subject. What are opinions versus what are mis and disinformation, as well as what roles does AI and do algorithms play in misinformation? And then we will look into strategies on how you can cover misinformation. Let's start with some basic concepts around misinformation. Covering misinformation entails discussing how information flows on the web. There are many terms and concepts that can help you frame your reporting, but we will look at some that might be the most relevant to journalists covering online information flows. First, there's hate speech. Hate speech is discourse that expresses hate or encourages violence towards a person or a group based on inherited characteristics such as race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. For example, in Myanmar, military leaders and Buddhist nationalists used social media to slur and demonize the Rohingya Muslim minority ahead of and during a campaign of ethnic cleansing. Then there's misinformation. That's information that is false but believed to be true by those disseminating it. It differs from disinformation in the absence of an intention to mislead or harm. For example, during the pandemic, many people shared doctored images of wild animals flourishing in quarantine cities, thinking they were true. Then there's disinformation. Disinformation is the kind of information that is false and is disseminated intentionally to cause harm. For example, during the 2016 U.S. presidential election, Russian agents posed as U.S. voters and organized fake protests meant to sow division. It can be helpful for us to think about the internet as a media ecosystem with its own inhabitants and environments. Helpful questions you could ask yourself are: who inhabits it? Who are active information providers? Who are manipulators? And what is the system? Below are answers that can help you categorize all the people inhabiting a media ecosystem and the systems that govern it. So who inhabits it? Users, consumers, and audience members. Who are active information providers? Officials, news organizations, influencers, and other content producers. Who are manipulators? Potentially governments, political agents, maybe trolls. What is the system? Algorithms powering timelines. Now that we have a shared vocabulary around misinformation, let's look into all the ways in which we can investigate the social web. There are various ways to tackle stories about the social web. It all depends on what the central focal point of your story is. Recalling our previous exercise, we can now look into various players in our ecosystem, as well as the system itself. You could focus your stories on the audience and the users, the actors in that ecosystem, or the system itself. Let's say you start by focusing on audience members or users of platforms, unsuspecting people who are using social media to connect with their friends or consume news. Much of our experiences of misinformation are very individualized. Consider doing a quantified selfie for your stories. That's the practice of asking for access to a person's data to look into how they experience social media. In this story, BuzzFeed News analyzed 2,367 posts from the Facebook news feeds of a politically divided mother and daughter to show them just how different their online worlds are. You could also consider harvesting social media data at a bigger scale. This allows you to analyze people's behavior online to understand their collective actions. BuzzFeed News looked at more than 4 million Facebook posts from 452 Facebook pages to get a better sense of the hyper-partisan news ecosystem. The story found that more extreme and hyper-partisan news received more views than mainstream news. There are also ways to understand how politicians speak as a group. Harvesting social media data allows us to analyze people's behavior online to understand their collective actions, and it can also allow us to hold powerful people accountable. In this example from Pew Research, researchers looked into which news outlets legislators shared on Facebook. They found that there were major partisan and ideological divides between legislators and their news consumption. Then there are the bad actors, people, bots, and cyborgs who try to manipulate what people think or say about a topic by targeting everyday people online. Understanding bad actors can come through the content they post, who they are as individuals, and what their activity is online. For instance, you can look at bad actors by looking at the content from various websites. It can be helpful to see if people have simply copied content from one site and then pasted it across the internet. For this story, reporters were able to see that content from one website lived on 19 other websites. Looking for links to this content revealed who the top sharers of these stories were across social media. Both show possible bad actor networks. You can also look for bad actors by looking at who shares content across various websites. In one story from Code for Africa, reporters found that a network of 16 Facebook accounts, all not based in Ghana, systematically spread misinformation in Ghana by simply copying and pasting the same post over and over again. Data collected from websites and social media networks was used to identify disinformation coming from Macedonia. In 2016, BuzzFeed News traced over 100 active websites to Velis using domain registration records. Corresponding Facebook pages had hundreds of thousands of followers. One producer of misinformation said, "I started the website for an easy way to make money. In Macedonia, the economy is very weak and teenagers are not allowed to work. So we need to find creative ways to make some money. I'm a musician, but I can't afford music gear. Here in Macedonia, the revenue from a small site is enough to afford many things." Reporters from a Swiss public news organization used machine learning to identify fake accounts. They purchased 5,000 fake accounts, trained their machine learning model on the characteristics of those fake accounts, and then identified other fake accounts using this trained model. Natural language processing is the process of looking at a giant corpus of text and then splitting it up into parts, whether it's words, sentences, or phrases, to analyze it. Data for Democracy looked at shifts in the comments and tweets posted, which shows that they adopted eerily similar language during the same period of time. These were actors who were likely working together across different platforms. Data for Democracy looked at pro-Trump accounts and looked at shifts in the comments and tweets posted, which showed that they adopted eerily similar language during the same period of time. This meant that these actors were likely working together across different platforms. Once Data for Democracy identified sock puppet accounts, they were able to find linguistic differences between them and normal users. So, for example, while typical users made liberal use of exclamation marks, averaging almost one per message, sock puppets, meaning people who are paid to post or people who are trying to meddle politically, were even more enthusiastic, using exclamation points at more than double the rate of normal accounts. For example, messages like "Donald Trump for president" with 14 exclamation marks were not uncommon. Last but not least, you can choose to write about the broken system itself. These stories look at the system that governs much of our online experiences, which includes the impact of algorithms on the distribution of information and on access to opportunities. Think about looking under the hood of the system and taking it apart. One way to investigate the social web is to simply explain it. Goodbye Big Five, for example, was a series that looked into what life would look like if we stopped using Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Facebook, or Meta. Amazon, for instance, runs much of our online activities. The devices of Kashmir Hill, the reporter, collectively pinged Amazon just shy of 300,000 times in 1 week. You don't always have to explain the system either. Sometimes it's enough to poke the system and play around with it to show that it does harm. In this story from ProPublica, reporters set up an account to place Facebook ads and found that the platform would not stop them from placing racist and discriminatory ads. Thank you so much.